So, an update on how our dahlias are getting on. It's now the 23rd of June. If you've been following previous videos, you'll know that we've got three sorts of startup dahlias. We've got dahlia tubers, we've got dahlia tuber clumps, that is, we've got single dahlia tubers, and we've got cuttings which came from pot dahlias. And all of those are in the ground now, so we'll have a look at each of those categories and see how they're getting on. These were the first that we put into the ground, so this is a raised bed, and these were single dahlia tubers which we got started fairly early on in February, and they were planted out just a month ago on the 22nd of May. So these have been in the ground for a month now, and they've caught up nicely. The roots are going nicely, and they're beginning to put out flower spikes. You can see on this one there, there's a flower bud at the top there. The conditions haven't been perfect. It's been very dry here in the UK, and I've had to water these a number of times. There's one thing dahlias can't do without, it's water. These are all looking nice and healthy now. The leaves were yellowing a little when they were still in the pots, and most of those have caught up nicely and filled up. So I think they were short of nitrogen in the pots because they were basically pot bound. You see that bit of yellowing at the edge of the leaves there, but much less than when they were put in the ground a month ago. So that deficiency is catching up. We feed organically, so we're not going to be putting any so-called fertilizer on this. Dahlias do need nitrogen at this stage, and then once to put on leafy growth. And then once they get to the flowering stage, you would want to put something high in potassium. The feed we've got here there's two sorts of feed added to the soil. There's you can just see the remnants here of lichen, which comes packaged by Dalefoot composts, partially composted lichen, which is said to provide a feed for 2 years and is high in potassium. And then when we planted them up, we put some seaweed meal in each planting hole, and we might add some comfrey or some nettle tea, which we've got brewing at the moment. This variety is Oreti Bliss. Every one of them is now putting out a flower bud. There's a nice flower bud, hopefully you can see that, and you can also see that there are two axillary buds along with the main bud. You can see that. And one of the decisions you'll be making if you're growing dahlias, particularly for cutting, is whether to take these buds out to disbud the two smaller buds there. And also sometimes you get further spikes. The plant's a bit young to show, but you get further spikes in the axil below the main bud, which are also putting out flower buds. And as everything elongates, you'll be making a decision whether to disbud those lower buds as well, so that you've got a nice long flower spike to work with in an arrangement. If it's for pure garden display, then it's your decision whether you want 3 flowers which are a bit smaller, or one main flower which is bigger because it's taken all the energy available. these spikes here, which will bear the flower, will elongate quite rapidly. At some stage we'll look at some other dahlias which are at a different stage, and the spikes are already elongating. They elongate rapidly, so come out one day and realise, we've got a cut dahlia brewing there. Once again, you can see here the main bud and the two axillary buds alongside it. So those are Auretti Bliss. They were single dahlia tubers, and they've been in the ground now for 1 month. And I'm expecting to get some flowers from those, maybe 7 to 10 days time. So let's look at the outside beds now. In this bed we've planted up in the first part some dahlia clumps, and then the second part is a bit of a mixture, so we'll look at those as we go. But the first 30 here in this bed are preference varieties called Preference, and they were dahlia clumps, so we bought the clumps in, and because they've got all that energy stored in the clump, they get off to a good start. These have been in the ground 3 weeks, so less time than the Auretti Bliss we looked at first, but because they're dahlia clumps, there's a lot more energy going into this growth stage. But the others, although they look as if they're a bit behind now, the single dahlia tubers and also the cuttings, most of which are to the right there, they'll all catch up and put on some good growth and give us good flowers. Just that the initial boost from the tuber is apparent here. We'll just have a look along this bed. So these are Preference, which are dahlia clumps. A little failure there. And most are just coming up to the stage where they're giving us the promise of some flowers in the very near future. We're moving on here now to, this is Wine-Eyed Jill, which is a dahlia clump as well, and you can see we've got 3 nice flower spikes brewing up there. This is the portion here which these 2 portions of the stem which will elongate rapidly once the flower bud has formed, and this one's even further on. It's showing a bit of colour there. So we make it. I've already disbudded here. You can see, looking now, and see where the 2 buds have been removed, and that will allow the flower at the top here to enlarge more than it would have done. I hope and expect now that these 3 portions of the stem, here, here and here, will elongate rapidly and give us a good flower stalk which we can use. It is early days, so pretty young, and we might not have a stalk long enough to use, but be a little bit patient and they'll come soon enough. So these Wine-Eyed Jills are all at the stage where they're putting out these flower shoots. Each of the axillary shoots, and you can see here, each of these shoots, which all come from axillae, this is the active part, meristematic part of the plant, with active growth. So each of these shoots will decide whether they're going to become a shoot with leaves or a shoot with a flower bud on top. Each variety is different, and you may get one or the other. And then as the plant enlarges, you start to have to make decisions about where to make cuts to give you the shape of plant that you want, and also the output of flowers that you want. And if it's for garden display and you want as many flowers as possible, then you can just leave the whole thing alone, and you'll get a nice display of flowers. You will have to deadhead the flowers, otherwise the whole show will stop. But you can certainly leave a dahlia alone to get on with it, if you choose to do so. We're growing here for cut flowers, so what we're trying to do is to get as long possible flower stems and flowers that are as big as we want. So sometimes the flower may be much too big for our purpose, in which case we would leave as many flowers as possible, all growing, so they're each taking some energy. And also we would not disbud. We would not disbud the flower. The ones further on here looking a bit pale, but they'll be all right. They need some nitrogen by the look, because they've been in the pot as long as they were. They need to catch up now and get some nutrients going. Now these ones were single tubers rather than tuber clumps. So Wine-eyed Jill here, Dahlia clump, lots of energy to get going. Brookfield Snowball here was a single Dahlia tuber, so not as much energy to get going, but it will catch up. It is pretty dry, and although we're on clay and I've done a reading and there's plenty of water deeper down, I am giving some surface water here to make sure that we're not starving our dahlias of water. If I got the pronunciation right, this is Friquelay, which is also a dahlia clump. So you can see each time we come across a dahlia clump here, it's a much bushier plant because of that energy boost. And then the last one in this is single tuber again. What it is, Clearview Audrey. Clearview Audrey. This is the first of our pot dahlia cuttings. So these lonely little guys down the bottom of the bed are in fact cuttings. So there was no tuber planted, pure cuttings taken from pot dahlias, part of our series of videos, and held in the pot until 3 weeks ago when they were planted out. And although they look a bit slow at the moment, they're going to be okay. So that's that bed. And then the next bed along again is a mixture, so we'll have a look, see what we've got. These first ones here were pot dahlia cuttings, so these were plants without tubers. A little bit more advanced. This is Hillcrest Jersey. If you followed the video from the pot dahlia cuttings, you'll recognise these guys, which were taken as cuttings. There's an imposter here. Not sure what that is, but it's not a dahlia. And then the next ones along are these ones are Kilmore, which are pot tubers. Got a little ladybird in there, ladybug if you're American. So there are all the Kilmore cuttings, pot dahlia cuttings. They've been in the ground there for about 2 weeks, I think, so they're really just getting established now and getting going. These are all still Kilmore, so we got quite a few cuttings from that particular pot dahlia. Got a few more preference just popped in there. They were the sort of late starters of the preference dahlia clumps. And then the next one along here is Jossudi Hercules, which is pot dahlia cutting again. So this bed's made up of mostly our pot dahlia cuttings. Jossudi Hercules there. And then a bit of a changing character. There's a few stragglers of this and that here. Good variety of weeds as well. Okay. We'll walk around now into the big polytunnel. And look at the rest of the dahlias that we planted. So this is our half completed polytunnel. We've left the ends off because it's very, very hot. It was Midsummer's Day yesterday, or rather the longest day yesterday, and the sun hasn't gone in now for a couple of weeks, so a polytunnel like this really would get too warm and it would need shading. So rather than go through that, we've left the ends off for now, so that there's enough air going through. We've got vents down both sides, so that helps as well. Anyway, dahlia wise, these here are the cafe au lait dahlias, so these were dahlia clumps, and again they've been in the ground now for 3 weeks. They're our pride and joy. Cafe au lait, very large, stunning flower, favoured, I'm heard, favoured by brides, I hear. So we've got those in the polytunnel so they don't get damaged by the weather and give them the best chance of being the best blooms. It does look very dry, doesn't it? But we are watering over the top, and the readings of the moisturometer are actually quite high because we're on clay, so there's a sort of table of water resting on top of the clay, feeding the surface, I hope. But I'm keeping a very close eye on how much water these dahlias, making sure that they get enough water, and if I don't think they are, then I'll give them some water over the top. These are dahlia clumps as well. This is Ambition. This is again giving us just some early spikes there, flower spikes. If you remember back in one of the videos, we talked about how many stems to allow, and between 5 and 7 was the decision, so we can see how many is there. So any more than 7 stems coming out of our tubers, and we'll remove them so that there's enough energy in each of the stems to get the plant going nicely. How many's that got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That one's got. Anyway, you can see the principle that we remove some stems so that we haven't got 15 or so stems trying to get nutrients from one small piece of ground. plants allows you get slow to get started. And then the last ones here to look at, these are single tubers, Stella Blyton, Ludwig Hellcrest, Ludwig Helfert, sorry, that's a Dahlia clump. White Knight were single tubers. Just getting the flower going there. I've already disbudded, you can see where I've taken the bud off that. We're going to talk about slugs and snails at some stage and what you can do, but we're lucky just at the moment because it's been so dry that there aren't so many of the little blighters about, because we've had a very dry month, and they don't like crawling across dry soil, so we're not seeing so many of them. But I do come out in the evening and have a look, and if there's any slugs then I'll do the necessary. And we'll be talking in another video about which slug remedies work and which are probably not worth bothering with. They've all got some value. Hundreds of different ways of dealing with slugs. So that's our Dahlia update, how we're getting on just now. As time goes on, we'll come back and see how we're getting on, and I'll share that with you. Okay, so thanks very much indeed for watching again. I'll see you soon, I hope.